you ever wondered what true fairness looks like in a society? What if you had to build a society from scratch without knowing your place in it? Would you prioritize those who are most vulnerable, or would you design it to favor those who are already powerful? These are the kinds of questions that John Rawls, a philosopher whose ideas have shaped the modern understanding of justice, explored with his groundbreaking theory of justice as fairness. Rawls' theory is encapsulated by his concept of the veil of ignorance. Imagine, for a moment, that you are in a hypothetical scenario where you must design the rules of a society, but with one condition. You don't know anything about yourself. You don't know your race, your gender, your socioeconomic status, your abilities, or even your desires. You are stripped of all your personal characteristics and placed in a position of complete ignorance regarding your place in the world. This thought experiment is designed to help us think about justice without the biases and inequalities we carry with us due to our backgrounds and life circumstances. When placed behind the veil of ignorance, you are forced to consider society's rules from a perspective of fairness, because you could end up in any position in that society once the veil is lifted. At first glance, it might seem like an impossible task to build a society without knowing anything about yourself. But what Rawls argues is that by taking away this knowledge, you are more likely to make decisions that protect the most vulnerable. Without knowledge of whether you would be born into wealth or poverty, into a life of privilege or disadvantage, the rational choice would be to build a society that provides a fair shot to everyone. Rawls suggests that we would design a society that prioritizes fairness because we would want to ensure that no matter where we ended up, we would be treated justly. This framework challenges the traditional views of justice that often prioritize the interests of the powerful or the already privileged. Instead, Rawls' approach forces us to think more deeply about what justice actually means when we remove the lenses of personal interest. His concept of justice isn't just about ensuring equality in terms of opportunity, but also in terms of outcomes. The idea is that society should be structured in a way that the least advantaged are still supported and uplifted. This is where the difference principle comes into play. The difference principle is one of the most radical aspects of Rawls' theory. It states that social and economic inequalities are acceptable only if they benefit the least advantaged members of society. In simpler terms, it suggests that while people may have different levels of wealth or status, these differences must work to the benefit of those who have the least. This is not about equality in the strictest sense, but about ensuring that inequality, if it exists, is justified by its positive impact on the least fortunate. Take, for example, a society where some people are vastly richer than others. Rawls' theory would ask, is that inequality justified? Under the difference principle, it would be justified only if the wealth and resources of the richer individuals somehow improve the living conditions of those who have less. This could be through social programs, public services, or policies that ensure that the most disadvantaged people have access to the same opportunities. Rawls argues that, under the veil of ignorance, we would all agree to such a system. If we don't know where we'll end up, we'd prefer a system that works to our benefit no matter where we land, especially if we might end up among the least advantaged. This perspective encourages us to think not just about the fairness of individual actions, but also about the fairness of the structures that we set up in society. So, imagine you're behind the veil of ignorance. You're tasked with designing a society, and you must consider all of its rules and policies. What would you prioritize? Would you create a system that supports the most vulnerable, or would you give more power to those who are already in positions of strength? The veil of ignorance forces us to confront these questions and to create a fairer, more just society. One where the needs of the least advantaged are taken into account before we decide on the rules. But how does this play out in practice? How can we take Rawls' abstract ideas and translate them into the real world? To understand this, We need to explore how these principles have influenced not just political theory, but also practical debates on issues like income inequality, healthcare, education, and civil rights. Rawls' ideas have sparked discussions on what it means to create a fair society, and they've led to tangible policy recommendations aimed at ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to succeed, no matter where they start in life. Now, if we take a closer look at the way societies often function, we realize that Rawls' theory offers a profound critique. Modern societies are full of inequalities, wealth disparities, unequal access to education, healthcare, and even basic human rights. These inequalities aren't just accidents. They're often the result of systems designed in ways that disproportionately favor those who are already well off. This is where Rawls' theory has its greatest relevance. It helps us recognize the deep injustices built into our current social structures and provides a framework for correcting them. Think of the wealth gap, for example. The richest individuals in many countries hold a disproportionate amount of the wealth, while those at the bottom struggle to make ends meet. Rawls would argue that this inequality can only be justified if the wealth of the rich somehow benefits those at the bottom. If the gap between the wealthy and the poor is growing, and the wealth of the rich does nothing to improve the lives of the poor, then we have a problem. The difference principle would demand that the wealth of the rich be redistributed in such a way that the least advantaged benefit from it. This idea isn't just a critique of individual wealth, but a critique of the systemic structures that allow such inequality to persist. Rawls would argue that a just society isn't one where the wealthy can accumulate resources at the expense of the poor, but one where every individual is afforded an equal opportunity to succeed. This would require rethinking policies that perpetuate inequality, such as tax systems that favor the rich, or healthcare systems that leave the poor without access to care. This critique of inequality is not just an abstract philosophical exercise, it has practical implications. By applying Rawls' ideas, we can envision a society that isn't simply concerned with ensuring everyone has equal opportunity, but also with ensuring that those who start with less, whether due to their socioeconomic status, race, gender, or other factors, are given the resources and opportunities they need to thrive. In the real world, this means revisiting policies that influence wealth distribution, education, healthcare, and social welfare. Imagine a country where the state provides universal access to healthcare, where education is free and of high quality for all, and where social services exist to support the most vulnerable. These are the types of societal structures that would align with Rawls' principles, because they ensure that even the most disadvantaged members of society are supported and have the opportunity to live fulfilling lives. One of the most powerful aspects of Rawls' veil of ignorance is that it asks us to step outside our own biases and think about the world from a neutral perspective. It encourages us to imagine a system that benefits everyone equally, not based on who we are or where we start, but based on what we believe is fair. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the ways in which our current society often fails to be just, and it challenges us to reconsider what true fairness should look like. Take the debate around minimum wage as an example. In many countries, the minimum wage has not kept pace with the cost of living. This leads to a situation where millions of workers are struggling to survive on wages that are insufficient for basic needs like housing, food, and healthcare. From the perspective of the veil of ignorance, if we didn't know whether we would be born into a family with wealth or one living paycheck to paycheck, we would likely advocate for a living wage, one that ensures people can meet their basic needs regardless of the job they have or their socioeconomic status. This is where Rawls' difference principle comes into play again. It doesn't argue for total equality in income, but insists that any inequality must work to the benefit of the least advantaged. The idea is that even if some people are paid more than others, the system should ensure that everyone can live with dignity. This might mean higher wages for lower-income workers, but it could also include other forms of support, like affordable housing, access to healthcare, and social safety nets, that improve the quality of life for those at the bottom of the economic ladder. But not all inequalities can be justified simply by their benefit to the least advantaged. For Rawls, there are limits to how far inequality can be justified, and this is particularly important in discussions around wealth accumulation. A society that allows a small number of individuals to amass extreme wealth while leaving millions in poverty would fail to meet Rawls' standards of justice. The veil of ignorance compels us to imagine a world where we are born into a less fortunate position and to design systems that prevent the worst kinds of social and economic injustices from occurring. Moreover, Rawls' ideas resonate with modern debates on the importance of universal healthcare. Healthcare systems that allow individuals to die from treatable diseases simply because they cannot afford treatment fall short of the kind of justice Rawls envisions. Under the veil of ignorance, we wouldn't want to take a chance on being born into a position where we might not have access to the care we need. Thus, we would design a society where healthcare is accessible to all, regardless of income, so that the least advantaged don't bear the brunt of societal failures. In many ways, Rawls' theory is an antidote to the cynicism we sometimes feel in the face of systemic injustice. It provides a moral compass that urges us to build a world where everyone is treated with fairness, not based on their advantages or disadvantages, but because it's simply the right thing to do. The veil of ignorance encourages us to think beyond our own immediate concerns and to design policies that reflect a deeper, more universal sense of justice. But Rawls' theory is not without its critics. Some argue that his vision of justice as fairness is too idealistic, that it doesn't account for the complexities of real-world economies or human nature. Others argue that Rawls underestimates the importance of personal responsibility and the potential for people to use the system unfairly. Still, despite these criticisms, Rawls' ideas have endured because they offer a robust framework for thinking about justice, one that can guide us in the pursuit of a more just society. To move forward with Rawls' framework in mind, we need to ask ourselves, how do we measure fairness in the systems we live in? What structures can we put in place to ensure that the least advantaged in society are treated with dignity and respect? The veil of ignorance offers us a way to imagine a fairer world, but it's up to us to take those ideas and apply them in the real world. It's not enough to talk about fairness and justice in abstract terms. We must be willing to challenge the systems that perpetuate inequality and fight for a society where every individual has the opportunity to live a life of dignity and purpose. Ultimately, John Rawls' theory of justice as fairness forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality that many of our societal systems are not as fair as we might like to believe. The veil of ignorance allows us to see past our own biases and helps us to think about justice in a way that is inclusive and compassionate. By focusing on the least advantaged and designing systems that prioritize fairness for all, we can work toward a society that truly reflects the values of justice and equality that we hold dear. In the end, the beauty of Rawls' theory is that it doesn't just tell us what a just society should look like. It challenges us to actively participate in making that society a reality. It reminds us that fairness is not a passive concept. It's something we must work toward every day, through our actions, our policies, and our collective efforts to create a world where everyone has the opportunity to flourish, regardless of where they begin in life. And perhaps, in that pursuit, we'll come closer to understanding what true fairness really means.